This here is a maturity stage. Maturity stage is the stage after the vegetative stage, and this stage usually happens from 6 weeks to 8 weeks. So within those 2 weeks, you find that the kale crop becomes mature, or the leaves become mature in such a way that within that period, immediately after that period, they can be harvested. And actually, the maturity starts from the lower leaves, because the upper leaves are continuing to grow, they are continuing to expand. So the lower leaves are hardened enough and they are ready for harvest. And during the maturity stage, the leaves don't expand much, but what happens is that they usually harden. And this hardening is very important, because once they are hardened well, then they'll be able to have good shelf life. If they become too succulent, it means even the quality, when the final consumer is eating them, it will not be very good. But if and also if they are succulent, they will not have a very good shelf life. They are going to go bad in a few days once they are in the market. At this stage, the leaves are still growing, and as the leaves are growing, they need nutrients such as nitrogen. Actually, nitrogen, similar to the vegetative stage, this stage still requires nitrogen. And apart from nitrogen, this stage also requires a combination or a compound fertilizer, a combination of the different fertilizers, because at this stage, as I said, the leaves are still growing, the younger leaves, and you find that the lower leaves are hardening, because they are hardening so that in 2 weeks' time they are ready for harvest. At this stage, it is very important to keep all those pests and diseases under control, so that you can have all the leaves to be of marketable quality. So the maturity stage is a stage whereby the plant has grown in height, it has grown, the stem has become stronger, the leaves have multiplied, now it has maybe over 10, even could be even 20 leaves. But the lower leaves are the ones that are big, and they have hardened. The upper leaves that will be harvested later are still succulent, and we have the main shoot that is still growing smaller leaves. And therefore, at this stage, you find that since the plant is still growing, you find that still the nutrient, some of the nutrition, the nutrient that is required is still nitrogen, because nitrogen is still the main nutrient that is required at this stage. And you will find that during this stage, since you already applied a nitrogen fertilizer at the third week, this stage we require a compound fertilizer. It will depend on how you sow it or how the crop is growing. You may use a nitrogenous fertilizer. You combine with you mix together with a compound fertilizer. A compound fertilizer that has NPK 17, that was what they call triple 17, is a good one. And once this is mixed, then you can be able to apply it on the soil. And still, the fertilizer to use will be determined by the soil test that was done to determine the amount of nitrogenous fertilizer and even the NPK, the compound fertilizer that can be applied per acre, depending on the deficiency level of the soil. And therefore, that is the recommendation that will be followed as you do the fertilizer application. And here the fertilizer application is done by broadcasting, whereby once you know the fertilizer that you're going to apply, if you have an acre, a quarter, then that fertilizer is just broadcasted by hand in the field. And that is usually done a day before the rains, the day after the rains. If it rains the previous day, then you can apply today, so that the fertilizer can be taken up very well. And if maybe it's irrigation, you can apply, you can do your irrigation, and then the same day you can apply this fertilizer. And still secondary supplementation is required, and here we are going to use or to alternate a high nitrogenous fertilizer and what we call a compound fertilizer, a compound foliar fertilizer, which mainly has NPK. A good one is one that has a ratio 24-24-18, with included micronutrients. And this fertilizer is going to assist so that it can be able to build up holistically this crop in terms of the leaves, the growing region, and even the stem and even the roots. It is going to be able to assist that, and therefore that's why you alternate the nitrogenous fertilizer or the vegetative foliar fertilizer and the compound foliar fertilizer. And therefore once that this is done, you're going to find that the plant will be growing very well. And here at the maturity stage, the plant is no longer growing, the lower leaves are no longer growing, but they are hardening. And this form of hardening is important because it creates the quality in terms of the sweetness of this vegetable, so that it can reach the market quality. And also the other aspect is hardening so that it can be able to have the shelf life, so that once this vegetable goes to the market, it doesn't go bad after a few hours. It can take maybe 3 or 4 days, even a week, without going bad. And therefore, that's a very important aspect. And here, that's when we bring another aspect of a foliar feed we call calcium. Because calcium is important, because once it's supplied, it goes to the outer cover, strengthening the outer cover, the cuticle, so that the bacteria, the rotting bacteria, cannot, finds it hard to penetrate the leaf and start making the leaf to rot. And therefore, once you apply calcium, and usually advise, if maybe the calcium is not in the foliar fertilizer you are using, you can use calcium as a single application. And this foliar feed is usually mixed together when you are doing the insecticide and the fungicide. You mix this calcium together on the same pump, and then you can apply to the crop. And just to mention, as you are applying this fertilizer, these products, as I mentioned, there is a foliar feed. You can apply a foliar feed. You apply an insecticide and a fungicide, depending on if you are done scouting and you have seen these aspects of disease and pest, and you need to use the requisite insecticide. If they are not there, you can apply even a single fungicide, or maybe you can apply just a foliar feed. It is not recommended to apply a lot of nitrogen in this crop, especially at this point where it is maturity stage and the plant is almost ready for harvest. It's not recommended, because once this plant has a lot of nitrogen, then when it goes to the market, it means it will get it will go bad quickly. The shelf life will be reduced, and therefore it is important when during this stage, this maturity stage, depending on how the leaves are, if the leaves are big and they are good, you can be able to eliminate the issue of the foliar fertilizers. But if, according to the plant growth and maybe recommendation from an agronomist, they can be able to tell you it's good, maybe you can apply the compound fertilizer so that it can be able to boost the plant, maybe the nutritional level of the plant. And also it will depend on the color of the leaves. If maybe they are looking yellowish or pale green, or maybe they are looking purplish, which will depict there is some nutrients that are deficient, then you can go ahead and apply these foliar fertilizers. In terms of the pests and the diseases during the maturity stage, they are the same diseases that we mentioned during the early, the starting stage. The same diseases are the same the same disease and the same pests are the same that are going to affect this stage. And here it is very important to check, because if those diseases were not very well controlled in the early stages, they are going to affect the marketing or the market of this crop in this stage, because you cannot take a diseased leaf in the market. You cannot take a leaf that has a lot of pests in the market, because they are going to be rejected by the customers, or maybe it will go bad after a few days or a few hours. And therefore it is very important to eliminate all the diseases using the chemicals that are, or the products, the insecticides and the fungicides, the pesticides that I had mentioned during the starting stage. And this stage doesn't require any weeding because the leaves have covered well and the ground, the weeds on the ground are not getting sunshine, any sunlight, and therefore they are suppressed. Therefore, no need for weeding at this stage. And from this stage, we usually now go to the harvesting stage, and that's what we call the early harvesting stage. And that's where we are going to go, and then you see the management aspect that are usually deployed at that stage.